Assalamu alaikum and welcome to a new episode of Spiritual Reflections being brought to you by Cyprus Islamic Association, Jazeera Derneyi and Cypriot Muslims. And again, I have two respected guests, both again from South London, Turkish Cypriot, British born. Both of them are teachers. And I have Alimullah and also I have Ahmet Barut, who is the co-founder of Cypriot Muslims, Kıbrıs Müslümanları. Thank you everyone who messaged me and asked me to prepare another episode of Spiritual Reflections, which was a great success during Ramadan, and it was called the Ramadan Reflections. Today we've got a new episode and new questions, and hopefully this will enlighten our community about our heritage and also about our beliefs. Before I start with my respected guests, a little bit about myself. So I was born in the East End of London, and I came from a family of Turkish Cypriot migrants who settled in the East End of London. The East End of London at that time, when I was born, was there was quite a large population of already Cypriots who had migrated to London and settled around the east part of London, and of course there was lots of Turks in the north parts of London. My parents' families had also arrived here just after the Second World War, so it was a well-established community. People had businesses and factories, and that's how I grew up around a very Turkish Cypriot community and also Greek Cypriot community at the time. And most of my life has been spent in East London, and I still reside just east of London still today. And my question first will go to Ahmet Barut. Can you tell us a little bit about your background, like where you grew up? What do you do now?
Well, yes, thanks for having me on again today, Hojam.
It's a great pleasure.
I was born in London, and I grew up in Southeast London, and so I grew up as a typical Turkish Cypriot with having lots of family in my area as well. So we see our family quite a lot. So we were really close knit, and we still are still. And at the moment, I'm a teacher, a primary teacher, and I've been a teacher for about nearly 7 years now. And before I was a teacher, though, I was a graphic designer. I actually studied graphic design. But unfortunately, there wasn't a lot of opportunities at the time, because when I graduated, it might have been, it was because it was what do you call it? The recession, was it? About 10 years ago. So that's when I graduated, and there didn't seem to be a lot of opportunities, unfortunately. So after about 3 years of doing that freelance graphic design, I decided to, go into something else, which was more secure as well. So and my cousin suggested for me to go into teaching. So I went for it, and I've been there ever since. So yeah, Allah shukr.
All right. Can I just ask a quick question, Ahmet, just for my interest as well, and for our audience? Were your parents born here, or did they come late at the stage?
Actually, they came later on. So they're born in Cyprus, both of them. My mum's side's from Polomitia, which is like a köy near Limassol, and my dad's side is from Mausa. And yeah, I've only been to Polomitia once or twice, and Mausa, obviously, we've been quite a few times. But we actually when we go to Cyprus, we spend most of the time on the north coast, like we usually stay in Lefkoşa actually as well.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. And Alimullah, where did you grow up in the UK? Or was you born in the UK? And what are you doing now?
Thank you for having me again. Just like to
welcome.
Start by saying,
great pleasure.
I grew up in exactly the same area as Ahmet, to be honest. We didn't really know each other growing up, because I think I'm a few years older than Ahmet. But yeah, Southeast London. So I'm born in Lewisham. Ahmet, you and I went to the same school, didn't we? You went to Crofton as well?
Yeah, same secondary school.
Yeah. But
Small world, isn't it?
yeah, but I'm definitely a few years apart, so I don't remember you.
Yeah.
But yeah, so grew up in Southeast London. You know, I'm also a teacher. I've now been teaching. I think this is coming up to my 15th year. And I chose it's my first profession, to be honest. I didn't go into it after anything else. And I had such a good relationship with my teachers. And I really enjoyed the school that I went to. So sort of when I finished university, I remember going back to school and just speaking to them. And, you know, they said to me, you know, why don't you come and try voluntarily, you know, sort of teach alongside, do some assisting on the side. And I did. When I did that, and I realized actually this was actually quite enjoyable. And because I had that really good relationship with them, and sort of going to school was something I always enjoyed, especially sixth form. It was an easy transition. It's something I really enjoyed doing. And 15 years later, it's just, I can't see myself doing anything else right now, to be fair.
That's interesting.
That's, yeah.
Can I ask something as well? So did do you know when your parents came to the UK, or how they came, or where did they come from?
Yeah, so my parents came just before 74, just before the war in Cyprus. They, how should I? They are both from Limassol. Or my mum is from Limassol, and my dad's from the outskirts in a village called Dalamesia. I don't know if you've heard of that one.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. So they arrived just before 74. My mum was here in college. My dad was sort of, I think he was just working at the time. And then once the war broke out, there was sort of no chance to go back. So, you know, half of their families were here, some were there. And yeah, so after that, they just ended up staying, I guess.
Yeah, so for you, like Ahmet, I think family were in the north, I think already, yeah, Ahmet? I think we've lost Ahmet for a minute. But no. Ahmet's family, I think your family are originally from the north and you're from the south, which is interesting. And then you both live in South London now. So that's a good mixture.
I think he said his mum was from Limassol, didn't you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so my mum's from Limassol. My dad's from Ulster. But we spend most of the time when we go on holiday in Guyana.
Yeah.
A lot of the time.
Before I go to my next question to you both, for me as a child, Islam was always like played a major role. Even if it wasn't major, there was always this kind of element of I know I was Muslim as a young child, so I was raised to be reminded, let's say, that I'm a Muslim, so I wasn't allowed to eat pork, and I had to constantly every night before going to bed learning some prayers and reading small verses of the Quran and memorizing them as well. And it was always reminded. I was always reminded that when you go to school, you don't eat pork and so and so. So I actually grew up and I preserved these kind of morals. The question I'm going to ask you is, did Islam have a role or an influence in your life before starting to practice as a Muslim? And I'll start with you again, Ahmed.
Well, while growing up, Islam really didn't have a big role in my life. It was like a minor role, I would say. But when I look back, I would say that I knew that I was Muslim, but and my parents told me about like the mere basics of Islam, but it didn't really have a major role in my life. But there was like a sense of pride within us, like that we're Muslim, we're Turkish Cypriot. So that if anything, that was there in terms of Islam. And there were certain things as I was growing up that remind me that I was a Muslim, like certain words like inshallah, mashallah, like everyone knows. Also like the Bayrams. So there were these things, and also even when I went to Cyprus, the Azan really reminded me that I'm a Muslim. And in actual fact, the Azan was probably one of the first things that really made me feel like spiritual, I would say, because for me anyway, it's a very very soothing sound, and it's sort of like a mystical sound as well. So it makes you sort of think. So that was an element as well. And also other things like fasting. My mum used to fast back in the day, and we used to experience that with her. And then I started actually fasting when I was about 17 years old, not because I was practicing. I just thought, in actual fact, I was going through quite a hard time in my life. So I thought, let me try fasting and hopefully I'll feel better. And you know what, I actually did. And maybe that was like the first steps of me like coming into Islam. But again, it wasn't like a major thing, because as everybody knows, at the moment, Turkish Cypriots on the whole aren't really religious at the moment, or practicing, I would say, mainly because of the fact that we just don't know any better. And if we do know a bit more about our religion, I think that will change us for the better as well.
Just a quick question on something that you said that was just so I can clarify something. So when you tried that fasting when you was younger, did you know it was a religious fast, or did you just think it was a cultural thing that was done at home?
Yeah, well, I knew it was a religious fast, but I actually didn't know it was compulsory. I thought it was like an optional thing. And same for like other elements of Islam. I didn't really think about whether it's optional or if you had to do it. Like, for example, namaz. I knew about namaz, but I didn't know that. I didn't really think about doing it or having to do it. And if I remember correctly, I think I was thinking like some Muslims do namaz, but we don't really do it. But it was quite a confusing time, actually, to be honest. But as I grew up and as I learned more about Islam, that was clarified for me. It was more clear. There was more clarity.
Thank you. We've got viewers watching and people saying hello. And April Mehmet, thank you. She says she loves this program. April Mehmet asks a question, so I'm going to note the question. Is Nazar real? Is it part of Islam? When we say mashallah because Allah is in the world, what does mashallah mean? Yeah, I'll answer the first part of the question. Maybe I'll ask one of you to answer the second part of the question. Yes, in Islam, Nazar, or in Arabic as known as Ain, which means the eye, is real. And there are hadiths in by the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And just for our viewers, hadith are the sayings of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And yes, the Prophet says that yes, the nazar or the ayn is haq. It's true. It can happen. It can the evil eye can be put on a person. It's not always done. Sometimes in the intention that someone hates you or it's evil. It's something that can happen. Even you can actually put the evil eye on yourself sometimes if you. There's different things. If you look at a child too much and put your eye on him, not even if you are intending to put the evil eye on someone. So that's why the Muslims use these kind of words like mashallah, and saying mashallah protects, because you're invoking the name of God and asking God to protect yourself or the person or even the object, because sometimes nazar can also be put on an object. It can be put on a house, on a car. And maybe just before the end of the program, I can tell you, I can relate a very short story, something that happened to me with a new car that I probably think it might have been the evil eye. Ali Mullah, before you answer the next question, do you want to say, do you want to give an explanation what the word mashallah means in Arabic?
Yeah.
Why do we use it?
The word mashallah simply means Allah has willed it that way. But in the context that we use it, sometimes it's not always obvious. So when we say inshallah, it means if God wills. When we say mashallah, it means Allah did will it that way. But what we kind of mean when we say it a lot of the time is, we look at how good something is or how fine something is, and you might say mashallah, and it's like saying, oh, how amazing is that? But the actual literal meaning of it is that's how Allah willed it to be. So that's how Allah wished for that to be. So when you say mashallah, when you look at something beautiful, or you praise something that someone is wearing, or how handsome a young man is, or a young lady, how beautiful a young lady is. When you say mashallah, you're saying how beautiful is that Allah created it in that way, or that person in that way, or that you've been blessed with that thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course.
Can I just add one other thing as well? So in regards to Nazar, if you don't mind me just adding to that, is even though the evil eye is definitely something that we believe in, and we do believe in Nazar, and rightly so, like you said, someone, you can bring envy and bad luck to your own son or your own objects if you're sort of excessively sort of
that's the word, excessive.
Yeah. So if you excessively sort of wish on something, or you look at your son and you think, oh, how beautiful hair, and you're thinking about it, but you're not saying the word mashallah as well, you could bring that misfortune on him because you're kind of wishing it was you that had that. Or, maybe your hair's falling out, so you wish you had a full set of hair when you look at someone else. Or something, anything, I don't know. Maybe that person then has some sort of bad luck. But it's very important to just differentiate between that and then the object that people call nazar göz. So the object itself that we may hang up on a wall, or some people might have as a design on something like a picture. It is important that we differentiate between the nazar being something real and then that object being able to protect you. So culturally, maybe people around us, it's kind of like a object now that it's more fashionable and it might look nice in the house. But the moment that we say that that thing is there to protect you, it's also really important to recognize that we then put in our faith that that little stone or that little object or that picture will save you from bad luck. In which case, then the worry is then that you've taken your trust away from God because you've put it into that object. Yeah. Absolutely, and it's the same when, someone might wear, some people have hang a piece of the Quran on their wall. And yeah, it's, the Quran is a beautiful thing. It looks beautiful. The way it's written for us is it's very artistic and it looks amazing. And the words are even more so, obviously. But the moment we hang it and think to ourselves, if I hang it on my wall, it's going to protect me. Or some people wear a verse around their neck or something. If it's in the name of, let's say, I don't know, you like the style of it, then I wouldn't say there's anything wrong with that. But the moment we trust it and we say this is what's going to protect us, then it kind of takes us out of the fold of Islam. And yeah, so I think it's really important just to be sort of clear on that.
Yeah, so thank you. Sorry, can I just add as well, the fact that, thanks Ali for that, was really great. Also just remember that only Allah can protect you and nothing else, and nothing in this world, like physical thing, can't protect you. Only Allah can protect you, so no other thing can protect you at all. Like Ali said, it can be a decoration and that's it. But if you want a protection, you just ask Allah for protection and trust in Allah, and that's it. And nothing can protect you except for Allah. So that's very important to remember.
Yeah, I just want to remind some of our viewers that traditionally, if you go to some of the old houses in Cyprus, I don't know if you've noticed this, guys. But if you go to Lefkoşa or even some of the village houses that were built maybe 100 years ago, you'll see an inscription above the house in Arabic with the words "Mashallah," written in Arabic on the doorway before you enter the door. And it's really interesting because the thing they had that not only to protect the house, but so when someone was walking into your house, the first thing they see is that, so they say "Mashallah" before they walk inside your house. So they're already evoking the name of God before they came in. It was a reminder, and that's very beautiful. So that's one part. That's one part of our heritage, viewers. So if you didn't know that, sorry. Before we go to the next question, so Melda says, I used to have a chain with Nazar on it for to wear it. One day, had a shower, went to work, came home to find it in exactly the same place. I left it, but the eye was in 100 pieces. My mum said that something was going to happen to you, and it happened to the eye. That's very interesting. Going back to our question, and viewers, we are going to do, hopefully in the near future, a whole program on the superstitions, and are superstitions a part of religion, or are they just old wives' tales? But going back to the question to Ali Mullah, did Islam have a role or an influence in your life before starting to practice as a Muslim?
Yeah, I think it did. I come from that sort of generation, or the generation before me, had a heavier influence from their parents. So I could say, if I was to look at my parents, I could see that they were less sort of less observant than, let's say, my grandparents. On my dad's side, both my grandparents were Hajj. So, I grew up watching that, prayer was a normal thing for them. So, and if I stayed around at my grandparents' house, it would be a normal occurrence that, my grandparents would take me for a walk through the park. We'd go through, because we used to live in Old Kent Road. We'd walk through Burgers Park and we'd go to Old Kent Road, the Turkish mosque. What is it? On, I forgot the name of the road. Yeah, the old Peckham Mosque. So, yeah, that was something I remember growing up. And from my mum's side, again, I think my grandma wasn't as observant again, but I remember she went through periods where she'd really focus on sort of making sure she was doing her salah and stuff. I remember staying there as well and seeing that my grandparents would pray. Not so much my parents, but my parents played a very important role in that as well. So even though they may not have observed the salah, my parents, my mom and dad taught me quite a lot. So through my mom, as a child growing up, and your parents will wash you when you're a baby and you're a kid. I have never I've never been washed by my mom up to whatever age that was happening until, and not been taught the words of the Shahada. So making abdest as as we wash ourselves. So, we would start, my mom would say Bismillah, and then, she'd wash you. And at the end, she'd make me repeat, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. So that was something then that maybe I didn't understand what it was. But later on, when it come to learn that, it became so much easier because it was something that I'd repeat a lot when I was a kid and just didn't realize what it was. So yeah, there's a lot of things that we used to do, and maybe they never used to observe Salah, but as a family, most people in my family would all fast. So we would do things like we'd fast and stuff. So I would say so. I remember, I think through my teenage years, I went through a period where I kind of lost touch altogether. And during that time as well, I could tell you that, my grandparents, my dad's side, or my granddad would have passed away. And, my great grandma from my mum's side, which we knew was very religious as well. You kind of lose touch if you're not always around people that do these things. Growing up in Lewisham, it's quite a multicultural area. So I had a lot of Pakistani friends, a lot of Bengali friends. We have Nigerian friends that are Muslim. And you realize that, other people are Muslim as well. But we weren't as observant as some of the others. Some of my Somali friends growing up, I remember seeing some of my friends go to pray at lunch and things like that. I never really thought about it, to be fair. It was just something that, you do that? Okay, that's cool. But it wasn't something I did.
I can relate to that because while I was growing up, I grew up in a predominantly Asian. Well, there was mixed, but there was a lot of Asian people that moved in after the Cypriot community in the East End, and I would see that as well. That they'd go to the mosque and they fast. Although our parents fast as well, like my grandma, mum, I always knew there was Ramadan because there was always this kind of fasting going on before the Bayram. I wasn't too sure. I'm talking about my very early childhood. But I knew that something was going on, and there was a resemblance to Asian communities because I remember Asian people like bringing food around to the house, and we sending them dolma or whatever it was. Yeah. So there was this kind of interaction between the two communities, but there was cultural differences that I noticed straight away. But honey, this Nazar Nazar issue is quite an interesting one. So sorry guys, people are still talking about the Nazar. So Honey Gulbahar says, I've been told to use Tabarak Allah where I can, as well as Mashallah. Is that direct to protect from evil eye? Yeah, I will say that. And dear viewers, we will have a program about this. But if you can remember these words, try to use this. So if you ever want to protect yourself from the evil eye, you can just say Bismillah. You say Bismillah, Ma'ashallah. Bismillah, Ma'ashallah. Or if you know this, you can say Bismillah, Mashallah, La quwwata illa billah. Bismillah, Ma'ashallah, La quwwata illa billah. But if you're following Cyprus Islamic Association page, we can actually post some Nazar du'as or some ayats from the Quran or from the Hadith, from the sayings of the Prophet, how we can protect ourselves. But it's always a good custom. And even, as Ali said, even when our families were not doing all the major practices of Islam, these are the simple things that they were keeping alive, saying mashallah, saying inshallah, and remembering God. Before we go to our next question, Munever Borova, our lovely abla who works for Çatı, who works for the Roof Association, who works for the homeless, says, when I say mashallah to someone, I feel I handle her or him and I leave them under the protection of Allah. That's really beautiful. I use this a lot. So when she says that when I say mashallah, I feel from my heart, she's saying that I'm putting them in the hands of Allah, if you could say that, or in the protection of Allah. And Ruzishan Dervish Abla from the village of Evdim bize selamun aleyküm der. Biz de ona aleyküm selam ve inşallah Ruzishan abla ilerli zamanda bunun aynısını Türkçe yapacak sizin için. Ama I know you understand English ve Türkçe bilenler kardeşimiz için inşallah en yakın zamanda Türkçe olarak bir program sizin için hazırlayacağız. Before we go to the next question, as a child, I was taught the basics of Islam. I knew that Muslims had to pray 5 times a day. I remember waking up and going downstairs and occasionally seeing my mum roll out a mat and pray facing towards Mecca. We didn't know what she was doing, but we knew it was some sort of prayer. But at the age of 13, I began to research for myself to learn, because we was already learning by Turkish books, the famous Namaz Hocası, which probably predates me. But I needed to learn from English books. So that's when I started learning to research and find out more about Islam for myself. Guys, maybe Alimullah this time first. At what point in your life did you decide to look deeper into Islam, and why? What was the reason?
I think this would have been just after 9/11. So I think some of our younger viewers, if you're sort of teenagers, you may not remember this, or you've only probably heard about it. So it was during the time of 9/11, and I was just finishing sixth form, I believe, and I was starting university, and there was that period of, let's say, 1 or 2 years that I kind of completely, I would say, almost lost all cultural connections when I was in that last year of college, first year of uni, and then completely regained it again a bit later, and then a lot stronger. So 9/11 was something that brought Islam to the forefront to the whole world. And whatever you want to believe about it, you have your conspiracy theorists and this and that. If we put that to one side about who really did it, if we just focus on the fact that that event itself caused everyone to sit up and look at what Islam was, and it brought so much negative publicity to Islam, but inevitably it also brought a lot of interest, because when you have such a large proportion of society saying this is bad, this is really bad, and why are Muslims doing this, and why do they hate us so much? To us, to people like us that maybe we weren't observant Muslims, I'm not so sure about yourself, Hussein Aja, but for someone like myself and Ahmet, I know for a fact, growing up, when that happened, I didn't grow up knowing that Islam was a religion of hatred. That was completely opposite. So there was a period of, let's say, 2 years from when that happened, as I said, where I think I had a lot of influence from my friends anyway, where that influence almost took me completely away from culture. But then that whole thing about learning a bit more and wondering, actually, that's not true. Can that be true? And finding out, a friend of mine invited me to go to the mosque, and I used to work in a place, of all places, a bingo hall, which is a place of gambling, obviously. And when
Please
I went
don't
along,
say it's a Mecca bingo hall.
No words, yeah.
Shaka.
Anyway, it was actually. So ignoring that fact, so I went along, and I thought it's not a problem, because I know I'm a Muslim, even though I'm at that point practicing zero. And we just went along, and I was so intrigued anyway, because I didn't know enough. But this whole 9/11 thing was something that really, really intrigued me. So I went along, and we started listening to what the Imam was saying on a Friday. The next week, he said, you want to come again? I said, yeah, fine. So we went again. And then, that started happening on a weekly basis. Now, we both worked in the same place, and there were weeks that he couldn't come, but I found myself going. So, and for the first 6 months, I'm going to the mosque. I'm listening to the Friday prayer, Friday sermon, khutbah. And I'm just listening and just soaking all this in. And I don't know anything. I still don't know how to pray. When the time comes that everyone stands up and pray, I do the motions and then I walk away. But I don't feel like that's a waste of my time. I feel like I'm actually like a sponge. I'm soaking in everything that's being said. And I'm thinking to myself, whoa, what's being said here is completely the opposite of what the media is saying, what the public think about Islam. And, I remember it was like 6 months on. And, one of the recurring things that the Imam used to say over and over was, before, Allah changes the state of our own state, we have to change ourselves first. We have to sort of embrace the fact that, we're not a perfect community. And if you want something to change in your life, you have to be that change yourself. And he mentioned something along the lines of, people come here on a weekly basis. They just turn up on a Friday, but they're not doing the compulsory things that you need to do as a Muslim. We don't all pray 5 times a day. And at that point, I asked myself, I'm actually here for 6 months now. Why am I not praying 5 times a day? And that was such a big change from who I was 6 months earlier, that it was at that point I thought, okay, this is what I'm going to do now. But I was already convinced, because of what I'd heard over the 6 months, that it was something that's definitely something we should all be doing. Because the notion that it was violent, completely out the window. The notion that Muslims are rash and they don't think first. The notion that it wasn't peaceful. All of that was a complete opposite. And whenever we think to ourselves, we start every chapter of the Quran with the word Bismillah, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, meaning in the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. How can we start every chapter with Allah's mercy and then think that it's a religion of something that's opposite? So, but to be fair, that wasn't 100% enough for me either. So I'm the sort of person, before I commit to something, I always want proof. And it's hard to say, if someone was to say to you, look, you're going to make this much money if you just do this every day. And you might say, well, why should I believe you? I'm going to give away this much money. I'm going to invest this in. What proof have you got that this is going to be true? So I found that when I started looking more and more into it, you find things in the Quran that you think to yourself, this is so impossible for it to have been anything else but written by God. And so you find that you're believing more and more, and it's the evidence that you're looking for, if that makes sense. Do you know? I hope I'm not going too much on a tangent, and I know Ahmet wants to answer this question as well. There was a line in the film Malcolm X. I remember I mentioned Malcolm X a few weeks ago, and Elijah Muhammad, who I don't really have too much respect for, but he mentioned to Malcolm X, if your glass is half full, then you're not. If your glass is full, then you can't sort of take anything new in. And it was like the metaphor. The metaphor is the heart, really. So if your heart is full of something else, then you really can't accept anything else. So first he said you have to empty it. So that 6 months was a slowly emptying of that cup of water before I can fill it with something new. And that, what we ended up filling it in was with faith, with Iman. So, I hope that kind of answers the question.
Well, lots of people are agreeing with you, that's for sure.
Alhamdulillah.
There's lots of people agreeing with you. And viewers, we're halfway through the show. Please do send us any messages relating to why are we a Muslim, or if there's anything you need to ask while we're here, one of us will try to answer your questions. Now, for me, once I began to search and research for myself at the age of 12, 13, Islam was gradually about to change my life. The more I researched, the more I changed. I believe, for a better person. I live my faith, to be honest, to the best of my understanding of the knowledge I've gained. And, knowledge is there forever, even from the cradle to the grave, you'll learn knowledge as long as you're seeking it. So I think, the Hussein who was researching many years ago, is not the same person today, because we learn more, we learn from experiences and living experiences as well, because it's not just about learning, it's about putting it into practice as well. I think it's made me a better person. I hope people think that as well. But going back to something that Amullah said, so by the time the incidents of the 9/11 had taken place, I'd actually finished my Hajj by then. So I was a young Haji. And that happened right after. It happened a year and a half after I'd come back from Arabia from the Hajj, and I was only 19 when I went on the Hajj. By the way, no, sorry, 21. It was an experience, and it was a beautiful experience. But coming back and then having this happen was, for me, the most horrifying part of my life in Islam, because there was lots of racism, there was lots of Islamophobia. But just to say something, guys, that 9/11, what happened after 9/11 was, what happened after 9/11? There was this kind of interest, and not only by Muslims, but by non-Muslims. The sales of the Quran were like rocket high in America and Europe, and people were trying to find out who are these people. But that's not the first time it's happened. If being older than you guys, so when we had, and those who remember, so when the book Satanic Verses came out by actually a Muslim-born writer, so it was not a non-Muslim, it was a Muslim-born writer, Salman Rushdie, and he read the book, and I've got the book somewhere, and I've never read it actually, but I will read it one day, so I understand what all the fuss was about. But again, there was this very negative response by some Muslim people. But it had the reverse, because instead of the book being sold out in high numbers, the Quran and the religion was sought by people just to try to understand why were these Muslim people so angry with this book. So that's another interesting thing. Before we go to our next question, I've got Chanel Ali. I only started practicing my religion, and I feel more. The more I learn is beautiful. Feel closer to my Maker, which is Allah. Each day I feel like I improve. I would love to do some Quran classes, as I feel reading is not my strongest point with keeping the information and understanding the Quran. And I think it's really important to actually understand the Quran. And I know some brothers will differ from what I'm saying. I can read the Quran in Arabic, but I don't understand everything I'm reading, of course. I only understand a few words, and I have to look at translation and also a tafsir of some sort, some understanding of the Quran. So try to understand what the message of the Quran is in your own language. You do really need to understand what the Quran is saying to you, because the Quran is talking to you. It's the word of God revealed to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, to guide us. So we do need, it's a beautiful and it's very, very rewarding to read the Arabic and even listen to the Arabic. So you can just go on YouTube and upload a video from the Quran, beautiful reciters there, but also listen to it maybe, and then find a translation and also a tafsir, interpretation of the verse or that you're listening to, and try to learn. And the best advice I do is not to try to learn so much in one day or 1 week, but just like ponder upon a few lines every day and just take notes. And if there's anything you don't understand, then just try to research and try to have a better understanding of the Quran and of the religion itself. How has Islam changed our lives? And so, as I said, Islam did change my life, learning about the religion at the best of my understanding of the faith. Ahmed Barut, how has Islam changed your life? Can you give us any examples?
It's changed it in many ways. Before I go on to that, though, I'd like to make a point about your points as well about 9/11 and how much it changed a lot of people's outlook on Islam. Like, even though Islam got a lot of bad press in the media, for 9/11 because of those misguided Muslims who did that. At the same time, a lot of non-Muslims were coming to try and research about Islam. So, and that's quite interesting. And I would like to just mention a verse from the Quran. That Allah says in the Quran, "They plan, and Allah plans, but surely Allah is the best of planners." So even though Islam had so much bad press in the media, like I said, there's a lot of interest in Islam, which is quite ironic. And from what I've seen, there's a lot of people coming to Islam from that as well. And in actual fact, my story as well, like links to 9/11 as well. Actually, I didn't start looking into Islam until a few years after 9/11. And because when I was at university, I was in 2009, and it was my final year in university, and I had to do like a final major project. And as I mentioned earlier, I was doing graphic design, and I didn't know what to do, so I was just thinking about it. But at the time, there was the Iraq War and the Afghanistan War was ongoing, and that was linked to 9/11, wasn't it? And
yes,
because of it, because of it and around it, there was lots of misinformation about Islam. And even though I didn't know a lot about Islam at the time, I knew that all these fake things said about Islam on the news or in the media, on the internet, I just knew they weren't true. And that really concerned me as well, to think that, all these people are being misled by this, fake news. So I had an idea to actually design a pamphlet, a small booklet to basically dispel the misconceptions of Islam. To do this, I had to actually look into Islam to get more details. And the more I looked, the more gems I found, because I was pleasantly surprised actually. So I didn't know I would get so hooked. It was a new passion for me. So when I looked into it, I was looking at articles, but the thing that really hooked me in were lectures from Islamic scholars, like on YouTube. And obviously you have to be careful who you listen to. And if something doesn't sound right, it's best not to listen to it and go and get some more information from people who actually know, like real scholars. But there was quite a few scholars I listened to who were fantastic. The very first one was Sheikh Khalid Yassin, and he just hit home with the message of Islam, so clear, so concise, and so inspirational as well. Other people I listened to, and I still listen to today, is a really great Sheikh, I would say, Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, also Sheikh Abdul Hakim Murad as well. And all three of these people, who I've mentioned, they're actually all converts as well. Two of them are American, one of them is English in Cambridge. Actually, in actual fact, Hamza Yusuf, he's got Greek heritage as well. So that's really interesting. But yeah, for me personally, the more I learned from these people, the more Islam made sense, and the more the world made sense as well. Why we were here, the purpose of life and whatnot, and how Islam relates to the world and how it relates to other religions as well, and the origins of humanity and whatnot. So it all made sense. And also, like as Ali pointed out earlier, with these lectures came like different topics about the proofs of Islam, like whether it be the miracles of the Quran. There's various miracles of the Quran that you can look into. There's also prophecies about today that the world that we live in, and even the Quran itself, the way it sounds, even when it's recited, even if you can't understand it, it really touches you. It does something that you never felt before. Basically, it's not from this world. Basically, so with Islam, the way it changed my life is that the fact that I think near enough overnight, to be honest, my whole mindset about the world changed, and in a really positive way. Like before, when I was growing up, there's this, like I would say, rhetoric from our community about Greeks are this, Greeks are that, and whatnot because of what they did in Cyprus. And in other communities as well, there's like people thinking they're better than other people, thinking they're superior for various reasons. But once I had that sort of mindset as well, like the Turks are the best and whatnot. But after I started living Islam, that was eradicated. I was thinking that's really like foolish of me. It really humbled me and made me realize that we're all human beings. We're all the same. Allah created all of us. If Allah wanted, He could have created me as Greek if He wanted to. It doesn't really matter where you're from, where you grew up, and whatnot. So really, the way it changed my life was, it made me like a more accepting person, a more peaceful person, a tolerant person. I was tolerant anyway, but even made me even more so as well.
I think that's really important because the religion. I mean, when you read the Quran refers to all of mankind as the children of Adam. Yeah, so we're referred. The whole of mankind is referred to the children of Adam, and Allah clearly says that He creates us in different nations and languages and creeds and colors, only that we recognize each other. And the best amongst us is really the one with the best of taqwa. So that's really important. So I mean, if you look at the last sermon, maybe we can do a program one day just on the last sermon of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, before he left this life, before he left this earth. And that's clear. That's clear proof that no one is superior to another. A slave is not superior to his master. An Arab is not superior to a non-Arab, and a black is not superior to a white, or white's not more superior than a black. And that's something that we understand. And when we find Islam, and if you, brothers and sisters, whoever watch it today, if you get a chance to watch Malcolm X, please do watch it. It's a good film, and you'll get a good understanding of what Islam says about racial issues and the difference between colors. There is no racism in Islam, inshallah. But I always say, if you're a racist, you're a racist. Doesn't matter what religion if you've got it inside you, you've got it inside you. But can I ask you, Alimullah, before we go to our next two questions? How has Islam changed you, very briefly, if you can give us any examples, please?
I would say I was someone that was very impatient. So I think the most important thing I've learned is patience, and learning to look at everything you see and hear from more than one angle. So one side of a story is not enough. At the same time, is that something I've learned just through maturity? I don't know. Maybe I would have learned that anyway. But I can see from some of the things that you look into more when you start reading more about Islam is, for example, we look at things like the differences of opinion, and maybe the viewers are not so sure or so aware, but for example, within Islam we have different sects. All right, I mean, just using it as an example. So let's say you have the two major sects. You have Shiism and you have Sunni, and then within them there are lots of different branches as well. But sort of following one over the other doesn't always mean that one is a lot right, or one is right and one is wrong. And one thing I've learned is the way the Quran is an evidence for us, the Hadith itself as well. They are evidences, and they're also a basis for differences of opinion without being wrong or right. So, for example, you might take one view after reading an ayah of the Quran, and someone else might take another view. And like you said earlier, when you might read a few verses a day, and then you might ponder over what that means. And then you mentioned you should, read up on tafsir as well. So read up on what the scholars believe that verse is about, because a lot of it is about context. But historically, and this is what I've learned over time, is that historically different scholars have believed different things. And it's not that it's wrong. What I personally believe is that it's from the rahmat of Allah, it's from the mercy of God that we can have difference of opinions and
Absolutely.
still be right. There's no such thing as, it's not always black and white. And that's one of the things that Islam has taught me very, very well, is that there isn't always a black and white. You might have a difference of opinion and we respect that. But we are in a day and age right now where if someone that you listen to, or let's say, for example, someone in the media, if they have a difference of opinion on you, right now, the media is teaching us that, well, if he's got a difference of opinion, then the majority of the public, then there's something wrong with him. Yeah, we don't seem to have leeway anymore for people thinking something different and then being respected as well. You don't have to hate someone because they think differently from you. We need to sit back and have a look. And I think, as I say, so one thing is that it's really taught me patience. Secondly, it's taught me that, there's always more than one opinion. It's okay to have a difference of opinion on things. But, it's also taught me to sort of seek the truth in a different way, and to sort of be able to sit back and observe something, understand what might be right, what might be wrong. We all have a moral compass inside us. I suppose one of the best things Islam has taught me as well is that it kind of brings your moral compass back out, because, everything isn't always haram and halal, permissible and impermissible, but Islam really does straighten your moral compass out. You know when you're doing something wrong. And this is the most beautiful thing about being a Muslim. If this is the only thing that people take away from me today. For me, the most important thing is that if I do something wrong, I'm now reflective, and I may not have been reflective in the same way before. So if I say, astaghfirullah, I shouldn't have done that, God forgive me, yeah, I would have gained from the fact that, as a Muslim, you believe that you gain from the fact that God has forgiven you from that, whatever you did. And if something good happens to you and you say, alhamdulillah, thank God, then you gain the reward from remembering God and praising God for what's good in your life. And the same thing happens if you've recognized something bad is in your life, but fi kulli hal, alhamdulillah fi kulli hal, in every state we say thank God, because at the same time that reminds us that, okay, this might be misfortune what's happened in my life right now, but I'm still thankful for that because that's what's been written for me. So it's taught me a lot about what we have in a life and how to be patient in every aspect of life, because you could be very rich and you could be very poor, and both of those things are a test. Both of those extremes are a test for you. Yeah. So yeah, that's one of the main things. I'd say patience is the key thing.
Thank you. I'm just going to let everybody know that we're going to extend our program for another 10 minutes. But Hani Gul Bahar made a really, really good point. Islam is all about diversity. And if we can put that up on the screen, it's so true. Islam is all about diversity. I just want to just go on a point that something that you said, Alimullah. For those who are not practicing or do not have too much knowledge, yes, Islam has two major sects, but it's really, really not like the sects of Christianity. So the difference between Sunni and Shia has nothing to do with like being Greek Orthodox or Russian Orthodox, Eastern Orthodox or Catholic or Protestant, like you see in Christianity, because the reason why is that both of these two major sects, maybe they have their differences, but the foundation is the same. The foundation is Tawheed. So the foundation is the belief in one God, and also the belief that Muhammad was the seal of all the prophets, alayhi salatu wasalam, peace be upon him. And both of the sects, they fast, they have the pillars, so they fast, they give charity, and they both go to the Hajj. And in many, many cases, they don't have even separate houses of worship. Maybe in predominantly countries where one sect is stronger than the other sect, you will find a Sunni mosque, but it's not rare to see people come together, and especially like in the houses of worship, like in the Hajj, in Mecca and Medina and in Al-Quds and many other places, you will see the sects pray side to side together with no problem at all. It's more political than religious differences. So just to make that very clear. And so, everybody in life has goals. Everybody has their dreams. Some people want to be a millionaire. Some people want to go beyond that and become billionaires. Some people want to, trade in their Ford Fiesta, if they're still around, and then get like one day, hopefully for them, some Rolls Royce or Jaguar, whatever it is, or Porsche. I'm terrible with cars, by the way. I drive a terrible car, but it gets me to where I need to go. But so my goal in life, and this comes from my beliefs as well, because it comes from what I want to do. What I want to do is, I'm doing a little bit now, but maybe later on in my life when I can afford it, is travel more the world, see some of the things that Islam, and not only Islam but other religions, have given us in the world. See some of these important places. Go and work with the less fortunate across the world. This is my dream, to help people across the world, no matter what their religion or what their creed or their color is, but just like serve humanity. And maybe my last goal would be to retire back in Cyprus and to serve, here it goes, animals. So I want to open a rescue place for animals. This is my dream, inshallah, one day, is to open like a home rescue for animals, and not just like dogs and cats, but like for donkeys and other animals. That is my dream, inshallah. But you need a lot of money. Yeah, well, they need to be looked after better, actually.
Yeah. Definitely.
So my question to Ahmet Baro, what's your goal in life? Do you have any?
Yeah, I've got many goals. I would say the ultimate goal for me personally, since I've started practicing Islam, my whole life has become like a project in the sense that I'm always trying to, inshallah, get better as a person for Allah's sake, and try to get closer to Allah every day, inshallah.
Inshallah.
And inshallah, to be like the way Allah wants me to be. And that's, to do that, I have to follow what Allah has taught us in Islam and through His Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Also, so another goal at the moment, as you mentioned before, I'm a co-founder of Muslim Cypriots, Kıbrıs Müslümanları, and it's a platform for Turkish Cypriots who want to learn more about their religion, and it's a place where they can network as well with other Turkish Cypriots who have the same interests. And inshallah, it will grow and become beneficial for everyone who comes across it. And that's like a in the next sort of 2 or 3 years goal. But there's many other goals as well, inshallah.
Inshallah. Thank you. And Alimullah, do you have any goals, or is there anything that you have any dreams or things that you want to do in the future, or you're doing now that we should know about, that will inspire people?
Okay. Well, I think sort of teaching has become something that I went into because, as I said, I had a good relationship with my teachers. And I find that every day is a new day. And being a Muslim as well, it's something that, is very rewarding because you're trying to be a positive role model. Alongside that, some of the projects that we work on, I'd like to be able to benefit our communities as much as possible. So, for example, some of these things that we do, these live streams, and there are other opportunities that have come along as well. Opportunities for us to be able to, show people what Islam is really about is something that's, very important to us because, the Prophet Muhammad said, even if it's, the day of judgment is about to commence right now, if you can still do some good, whether it's, if you can plant a tree or something like that. But the hope is that everything we do is like planting a tree because, every positive step that we take, you'd hope that others can benefit from it. So really, that's my main thing. I do like the idea.
A lot of people agreeing with you. A lot of people agreeing with what you just said.
Oh, it's humbling. Yeah. So really, anything that does come up, I think the three of us as well, what I've noticed about all of you as well is that we seem to be on the same wavelength. We seem to jump on anything that we can if we think it can benefit others. In terms of my goals in life and what I do for work and stuff, I feel that I am kind of set in what I want to do. I'm happy carrying on, and I'm happy that this is what's I wouldn't say it was written for me because anything can change at any point. But I'm very content with the way things are at the moment. And who wouldn't want a better car, and who wouldn't want a bigger house? And I'm very happy that I'm fortunate. We have a roof over our heads.
Yeah.
We don't have bombs dropping around us. But if we can do something to benefit others, so whether it's helping those people that are in more need, or whether it's helping a community here, then it's kind of our duty. So yeah, Islam in a way kind of it's an ongoing thing, isn't it? If you trying to benefit others, is you're benefiting yourself. And our end goal really is we haven't succeeded if Allah isn't pleased with us. So
absolutely,
that obviously that is our real end goal, and that's what I'm working towards, inshallah.
Inshallah. It's been a really pleasure, having these shows. But I do want to just say something. I want to send a message out to our community. There's a lot of people that regularly actually watch us, and there's Hani Gul Bahar, there's Chanel, there's Melda, there's lots and lots of names. And if I'm missing out your names, do excuse me, and I'm really sorry because there's so many people watching. But I do want to say something to those people I've mentioned. You'll also have a chance to come on here, because it's not going to always be these guys, it's going to be you, because you have been really important, been watching these programs, and I'm following some of the stuff some of these people are doing, especially during the COVID-19. These are all active members of our community who have been doing things to help people. And when I see this, it always reminds me of that beautiful quote from the Prophet, peace be upon him, when he says, show mercy to those on earth so those in heaven can have mercy upon you. And that's really, really important. And we need to do this as a united community. And I'm glad that, people are watching these programs. I'm glad people are participating, asking questions. Before we go, guys, we've got one more message to give out to you. If there's anybody who wants to ask anything in the next 10 minutes, please do. What time and day does this start, please? So we usually can be on once a week, and we usually advertise. We also repeat these. These are actually saved, so you can watch them at any time. You can find them on my public Facebook, on Kıbrıs Müslümanları Cezire Derneği or Cyprus Islamic Association. Even thanks to TCC UK, I will be doing a weekly program on TCC UK on my own. Please join me for that. Thursdays or Fridays, we haven't decided, but we are going to be. And just want to thank the whole community, because you've all been amazing people in Ramadan, and let's continue this to go on. And if you want, you can also follow us on YouTube, and we can send links after, so the brothers can put links. This is not going to be just a brother show. It's going to have sisters on it as well, and anybody from the public. If you want to join us or come on and talk about your experiences, it doesn't have to be just about your religious experience, just your experiences as growing up as a Turkish Cypriot, trying to find and preserve your heritage. The whole idea, guys, is we're not trying to ram religion down anybody's throats. We're just trying to preserve whatever we've been left by our parents and our grandparents. And I do want to say this, we can't be like our grandparents lived in a complete different generation. Their outlook on Islam and how they were brought up was very different. My grandparents, for example, they were very, very strict. I remember my grandmother never knew how to read and write. She was forbidden to go to school. Forbidden. She'd never go into public places, because she was born in 1901. It's a different era. She lived to 106 years old. And for her, what she saw at the 106 was like, is it time for the world to end? Because it was a complete, and we know our parents came from a different generation. We come from a different generation. We're in a different country. We're in a different kind of society. Things have changed. And brothers and sisters, things have changed a lot in the Muslim countries as well. When people say, oh, it's shocking the way people live in the West, there's a lot of shocking things that happen in Muslim countries as well. It's not all, as Ali said, it's all black and white. But what I do want to say to you, I did actually post something on my public Facebook and my page the other day. Let's speak in the language that people understand. That's really, really important. Let's speak in the language. If I try to speak in the language of my grandparents, or even my mother or my father, people are not going to understand because we're in a different generation. Let's try to preserve our culture, our identity, our religion in the way people understand it today. That's really, really important. And before we go, if there's any more questions, and I'm going to check the questions, last messages from our respected guests tonight. My message to the community is always one of the same. It's love, respect, tolerance, and especially unity, and try to preserve our identity. Try to make time to speak to your grandparents if they're alive. Just try to find out how life was for them. Just take a couple of notes from them and just try to, to reenact what they did, so we don't lose our culture, we don't lose our identity. Because when a community start losing their identity, they do not become a community anymore. They just get lost in the void. So don't get lost in the void, guys and girls, and just try to find out and just try to preserve your identity so we can give this to our next generation. What would your last message be, Ahmed Kardesh?
Just now that we've got this platform for everyone to benefit from, always make sure to tune in if you can, and just try your best to look into your heritage, because it's an amazing heritage. Not only because it's our heritage, because obviously I'm a Muslim and I believe it's the truth. And our ancestors were Muslim as well. They were practicing as well, and they were practicing for a reason. And you need to also realize that reason as well, inshallah. And to realize why it's the truth, you have to look into it. And Allah wants us to learn every day, basically, if we can. So keep learning.
Thank you. That's beautiful. And you, Alimullah? Last message, it would be, first of all, thanks for watching. If it wasn't for the names that we keep seeing over and over, thank you so much for tuning in every week. And like Hussein just said, it is about you guys, taking our place as well. I think that would be better in the future. Would love to hear what you have to say. And that Islam is really, it's a very, very adaptable religion. So it's not that, like you said, Hussein Hoja, is our grandparents lived a very different life. Our grandparents, my grandparents, my dad died 20 years ago. In that time, if you think about it, some of our grandparents went through such little change over their lives. Okay. For some of them, the biggest change was maybe a TV was introduced, or maybe that once in their life, they had the opportunity to fly in a plane. Yeah. We are going through so much change, and technology seems to renew itself on a 6-month basis. And what's trendy, literally every couple of months, what's trendy is new again. So, but Islam isn't there to suppress us and say, this is what you can't do. In fact, no, it's there as a very clear guideline as to what we can do that's permissible while doing all these other things. There's nothing wrong with anything we do in life, provided that we just, we don't let go of this tradition, because it's not the kind of tradition that, for example, like a folk dance, for example, that, it might seem a bit outdated sometimes, or, you might do it at a wedding and it's fine. But with Islam, it's not that. It's not a cultural value that gets outdated. It's the most adaptable culture in the world. And that's why when you could say that when some religious practices don't always, from some religions, it may seem outdated, but with Islam, it's suitable for everyone's everyday life from now until the end of time. Because there's, if you think about it, for you to find 5 minutes in your daily life, a few times a day, and really praying might take you 3-4 minutes. All workplaces seem to allow people to go out and have a cigarette break several times a day. Sometimes praying is a lot quicker than that. Yeah. And everything else that comes part of our culture is something that we can do today, and we don't have to let go of that. That could be one thing that we hold on to, that holds on to our moral compass, because we are better people if we're always reflecting on what we do going forward. So that's my message.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed the program today, and I think a lot of people did. Last comment I'm going to read out is from Hani Gulbahar, and she says, it's lovely because everyone is at a different point in their journey. Absolutely right. But you all make it easier for us, whichever point we are. So thank you. Thanks for watching. I just want to just say a big thank you to everyone. You know, when people actually say, you know, Turkish Cypriots, they're not the most religious people. I actually don't. I take that with a pinch of salt now, because my community proved in Ramadan that they are a